Hey guys, it's Miss CK again, and we are going to be working through the MVP task 7.7. So for the last little bit, we've been working on factoring, and today we're going to take that factored form of a quadratic, and we are going to learn how to graph it in the factored form. So we're going to look at an example together, and the first example that we're going to look at together is y equals x minus 1 times x plus 3. So here we see it in the factored form. And we're going to be finding the x and the y-intercepts, the axis of symmetry, and the vertex. So we're going to be focusing on finding those four particular things in order to graph. So if you don't already have some, you might want a sheet of graph paper because we are going to be graphing these, or you can go ahead and just sketch you out a piece of graph paper if you would like, if you don't have graph paper at home. So the first thing that we are going to start with is finding our x-intercepts. Now remember, the definition of an x-intercept is the x value when y equals 0. Now, here is my equation. So if I replace 0 with y, since that's the definition of an x-intercept, I get x minus 1 times x plus 3 is equal to 0. Now, if we remember back to the 0 property of multiplication, that states that if AB equals 0, so A times B equals 0, then A equals 0 or B equals 0. So if two things being multiplied equals 0, that means one of those things has to equal 0, or they both could be 0 because 0 times 0 also gives us 0. So we use this property to solve this equation. So to find our x-intercepts, like I said, we put the factored form equal to 0, and we set each parentheses, each part that's being multiplied together equal to 0. So 0 equals x minus 1, and 0 equals x plus 3. Now we solve for x. So to get x by itself, we add 1 to both sides. So I get that x equals 1. I subtract 3 to move the plus 3 on this side. And I get that x equals negative 3. So these are my two x-intercepts. And remember, we can write them as an ordered pair. When the x value is 1, then the y value is 0. And also we have negative 3, 0. X-intercepts are also called solutions. So they also are called solutions to our equation. So you might hear that. Okay, so we have our x-intercepts. Now, let's find the y-intercepts. So the y-intercepts, this is when x is equal to 0. So I'm going to take my original equation, and everywhere I see an x, I'm going to put a 0 in its place. So y is equal to x minus 1. Okay, 0 minus 1. I saw an x, so I put a 0 in its place. And then I have x plus 3, so 0 plus 3. Y is equal to negative 1, because 0 minus 1 is negative 1. 0 plus 3 is 3. So y is equal to negative 3. Now if I wanted to write that in ordered pair, the x value is 0, the y value is negative 3. Okay, so we have our two x-intercepts and our y-intercept. Now to find our axis of symmetry. To find our axis of symmetry, we take the midpoint of our two x-intercepts. So what that means is I add my two x-intercepts together and I divide by 2. So my two x-intercepts were 1 and -3. So 1 plus -3, remember these are our x-intercepts. I add them together, I divide by 2. So that gives me, for my axis of symmetry, remember it's always x equals, because it's a line, it's not just a point, it is a line, so we have to have the x equals. And then 1 plus -3 is -2 divided by 2. Now we can reduce that. -2 divided by 2 is -1. So my axis of symmetry is x equals -1. And one last thing we need to find, and that is the vertex. Okay, so to find the vertex, we take the axis of symmetry and we plug it into x and solve for y. Like I say, my original equation was y equals x minus 1 times x plus 3. So I take that x equals -1 and I plug it into x into my equation. So y equals -1 minus 1 times -1 plus 3. So y equals -2 times 2, which is -4. Now, your vertex, remember, is an ordered pair. So we have the x value, we have the y value. So -1, -4 is my vertex. Now that we have all of that information, we can graph our equation. So here's a piece of graph paper. So my x-intercepts were 1, 0, and -3, 0. So those get graphed on our x-axis. So 1 and -3. Now my y-intercept was the ordered pair 0, -3. So that gets graphed on the y-axis. Then I graph my vertex. And the vertex was -1, -4. So -1, -4. Remember, the axis of symmetry goes right down through the vertex. So I draw my parabola. And there is the graph of y equals x minus 1 times x plus 3. Okay, we're going to do one more together before you do some practice in the book. So the next example that we are going to look at is y equals x minus 2 times x minus 6. So let's find the x-intercepts first. Okay, the x-intercepts, remember this is when y equals 0. So we plug 0 in for y. So 0 equals x minus 2, x minus 6. Now I can use the 0 property of multiplication to split it up so that each parentheses gets set equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0, x minus 6 equals 0. Solve. X equals 2. Add 6 to both sides to move the minus 6, so x equals positive 6. So those two ordered pairs are 2, 0, and 6, 0. Now to find the y-intercept. Remember, this is when x equals 0. So I replace my equation. Everywhere I see an x, I write a 0 instead. So x minus 2 would be 0 minus 2. X minus 6 would be 0 minus 6. So y equals negative 2 times negative 6, which is a positive 12. So that would be 0, 12 for my ordered pair, for my y-intercept. Now to find my axis of symmetry, we take the x values in our x-intercept and then divide by 2. So you're going to find the midpoint. So add your two x-intercepts, divide by 2. So 2 plus 6 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So my axis of symmetry is the line x equals 4. Now to find my vertex, I take the x value of the axis of symmetry to get the y value. So I'm going to take this 4, plug it in to my original equation up here to get my y value. So y equals x minus 2 would now be 4 minus 2, and x minus 6 would be 4 minus 6. 4 minus 2 is 2. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. So y equals negative 4. So the vertex, x value, y value. Okay. We have found all the information that we need. Now we can graph it. My x-intercepts go first, so 2 and 6. Okay, they go on the x-axis. My y-intercept is 12. So I'm going to graph that on the y-axis. So it's going to go a little bit off my graph since I only did my graph up to 10, so up there at 12. My vertex is the ordered pair 4, negative 4. The axis of symmetry goes right down through your vertex. Draw your parabola. Okay, guys, so that is graphing from a factored form. So remember, we found the x-intercept, the y-intercept, the axis of symmetry, and the vertex. So your assignment from the Ready, Set, Go is on page 50 to 52. You're going to do number 10 through 14. So it's 4 more of these problems where you're going to be finding out all of the information and then graphing. If you need more practice, don't forget there'll be a Delta Math assignment for you to complete, and then you'll have a quiz at the end. Please reach out to one of your math teachers if you have any questions about how to do this, and we can help you more. Bye, guys.